And hello everybody and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. Hopefully everyone had a very good, happy and very, very fulfilling and stuffed Thanksgiving. I know it's been a week already, but I only do the podcast once a week, so I gotta catch up on stuff. So hopefully everyone had a very good Thanksgiving and you all survived Black Friday if you went out Black Friday shopping. But anyway, welcome to the podcast. We have a lot to get to. Of course, I didn't do a real podcast last week, so there was a bunch of news items we got to talk about. And then, of course, gets to this week's news items. And then, of course, we'll talk about the movie releases coming out this week, which is very, very slim. So that will breeze right past that. But let's get right to it. Starting off with the news items that came out last week. I'm not going to talk about all of them, of course, because that would be ridiculous, and that would hurt. But let's talk about some of the news. Let's talk about some of the news items that came out last week. First, a few release date shifts came out for some pretty big movies. Kingsman: The Golden Circle will now be coming out on October 6th next year. It was originally going to open on June 16th. No reason for the move just yet, but they moved it from June to October. So either way, the wait's going to be a little more longer. But either way, the sequel is very anticipated. The first Kingsman was very good. I liked it, and a lot of other people liked it. So it's a bit of a shame that we'll have to wait a little bit longer, but there you go. So right now it's up against the My Little Pony movie. Yes, they're making a My Little Pony movie, and the sequel to Blade Runner, which is, of course, we talked about here on the podcast multiple times. It will now be called Blade Runner 2049. So there's that. Alien Covenant has also been moved to a pretty much more bigger prime summer movie season spot. It was originally going to come out on August 4th, next year, by the way, but now they moved it to May 19th of next year. So they moved it from late summer to now early summer. It looks like they're confident in the film that it will make a lot of money, so otherwise they wouldn't move it, but there you go. So Alien Covenant, of course, Ridley Scott's coming back to direct. It is a sequel to Prometheus in a lot of ways, and still a prequel to Alien. We'll talk about that, obviously, more when more news comes out on that, and once we get closer to the release. So we'll talk about it. We'll really talk about it more next year as well. So Alien Covenant will now go up against the new installment of The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Nut Job 2, which is, of course, an animated film, the sequel to Annabelle, that's coming out on May 19th, and Baywatch. So May 19th of next year is a pretty stuffed weekend, so be on the lookout for that. Alright, so let's move on from the release date shifts to more movie news. McKay is set to write and direct a Dick Cheney biopic. Apparently he's been working on the script for a while. He's been working on the script since he won the Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar for The Big Short earlier this year. So there's that, and this is something that apparently he's been wanting to do for a while, and that he's actually, as he told Deadline, who broke the story, that this is what he said. This is his quote: "I always found Cheney fascinating. Questions of what drove him, what his beliefs were. But once we started digging, I was astonished at how much he had shaped modern America's place in the world, and how shocking the methods were by which he gained his power." So it should be interesting to see how McKay kind of handles the subject and the whole film in general. The plan for the film is to send out the screenplay to a bunch of actors so they can start shooting early next year, and then ambitiously also release the film next year. So we could be talking about this film a lot on the podcast very, very soon. Angela Bassett has joined Marvel's Black Panther. The Black Panther cast just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and a bunch of big names are already attached to it, which is pretty cool. But Angela Bassett has joined the film as the mother of Black Panther. So she will be joining the film that already has a cast of Chadwick Boseman, of course, reprising his role as Black Panther, Michael B. Jordan as the villain Killmonger, Lupita Nyong'o, Diana Guerra from The Walking Dead, Florence Kasumbamba, I think that's how you say her name, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, and Forrest Whitaker. So cast keeps just getting bigger and bigger, and I think we're going to be talking about this film a lot more. They start production sometime next year, early next year, because they have a release date for Black Panther on February 16th, 2018. It just keeps getting bigger. I don't know if it can contain so many good actors. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Sticking with Marvel, Doctor Strange set a record for the single character film for Marvel in the new Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Doctor Strange has crossed the $616 million mark globally, which now makes it the most successful single character movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The previous record holder was the movie that started it all, Iron Man, which earned $585 million back when it came out in 2008. Of course, Guardians of the Galaxy made more money than Doctor Strange. However, that is a team-up film, not a single character film, so that's what doesn't make it count. This is a pretty huge deal for Marvel and the character, considering that, of course, like Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange isn't a character that a lot of people knew or know about. So it probably did help that there was a lot of great reviews for the film, that had a great cast, and it was unlike anything that we had seen before. And unlike Iron Man, which again started the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Strange has the advantage that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been pretty much at full swing, and that people are invested in these characters in this world that Marvel created. So moving on, the Highlander reboot gets the other John Wick director. So David Leitch has, of course, gotten the Deadpool 2 job for directing when Tim Miller dropped out, but his John Wick co-director, Chad Stahelski, hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right, isn't going to have him, isn't going to have let you take all the glory. So reports say that he has signed on to direct the reboot for Highlander. And now the search is on for a new group of writers so they can work with Stahelski to get the film going. And this is what he told the Hollywood Reporter about the project, saying, "I've been a huge fan of the original property since I saw it in high school. Such great themes of immortality, love, and identity, all wrapped up in such a colorful mythology. I can't think of a better property that gives the opportunity to create interesting characters, mythic themes, and action set pieces." So before you get too excited about, Highlander, the movie getting made, the Highlander movie has been in the works for a long time. It almost goes into the category of the Mortal Kombat and the Crow, because they've been saying they're going to make a Highlander movie for years. The reboot was first set up in 2008, so it's been in the works for a long time, and it never materialized. Directors like Juan Carlos Frenzen and Delio had signed on at one point. Justin Lin had signed on at one point, and that was probably the closest that I think anyone thought it would be able to get made, because Justin Lin was, of course, a hot name right now. But that never happened. Melissa Rosenberg, who is the showrunner and writer from Jessica Jones on Netflix, she was attached at one point to write the script, but of course that never happened. And then they had actors like Tom Cruise and Ryan Reynolds eyed up to play the leads at one point, but again, nothing ever came from it, so it just kind of fell apart, like The Crow and the Mortal Kombat film. So for those unfamiliar with the original, again, he kind of touched on it with immortality. Christopher Lambert, who, speaking about Mortal Kombat, he played Raiden in the first movie. He played a immortal swordsman that was dubbed the Highlander, who was then trained by Sean Connery. Yes, that's Sean Connery. His character, Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, which, of course, no one complains about Sean Connery, an Irishman, playing a Mexican, because screw it. Where's the outrage on that? Anyway, so they team up to defeat another immortal warrior that was played by Clancy Brown. He had a really cool name, but I forgot what it was. But anyway, that's kind of what the movie was. That's pretty much the basic outline of what the movie was. And there were some cool fight scenes, and they made like direct DVD, video sequels that were just okay. They weren't really that great. But like I mentioned, this has been in the works for a while. But I think at this point, Chad Stahelski is a pretty big name, because he has the John Wick movie attached to his name, and everyone loved John Wick. And I think him taking the director's chair could be a really good move to finally capitalize on getting this film out. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, they're bringing in new writers, so I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a Highlander movie done by at least one of the guys that made John Wick. I think that'd be pretty cool. Lin-Manuel Miranda wants to play a Spider-Man villain, more specifically, Carnage. You could everyone pretty much put this under the that's interesting pile of news that came out last weekend. Simon Thompson in the now not the latest episode of Meet the Movie Press talked about a recent interview he did with the Hamilton creator and star Lin-Manuel Miranda, which included him essentially saying that he wanted to play the villain Carnage. And this is what he said. Well, this is what Thompson said that what Miranda said. So Miranda is a big fan of Marvel, and there is one particular character that he would actually like to play. It's Carnage. He said if Disney and Marvel were looking at doing a Maximum Carnage movie or bringing Carnage in the MCU as a character, he wants to be Carnage. Generally, as a fan, he would love to play Carnage. That's a goal of his. And usually when actors kind of be like, oh, I want to play this character, sometimes it's like, yeah, it's them rallying and it's them, campaigning to play the character. Other times it's just being like, yeah, I would like to play this character with no kind of real, intention, or not necessarily intention, but like no real be like, oh, I want to play this character. And then, Stu's going to be like, oh, he wants to play this character. They're going to start calling them. It's usually sometimes noise. That's what I'm trying to say. But most of the time it works out. And Lin-Manuel Miranda is obviously a name that has been popping up around lately. He's been working with Disney a lot since Hamilton became the craze. He did the new Cantina song in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which I didn't know until like a few weeks ago that he had done that. He did music for Moana. He's going to work on the live action The Little Mermaid. He's going to star in Mary Poppins Returns. He's got a secret project with them. So it wouldn't be too crazy that maybe he's like, hey, can you put me in touch with, Kevin Feige or something? Or, at this point, Sony, since they're in control of the Spider-Man character. So I don't know. I mean, Carnage is one of those characters. If you don't know too much about Carnage, he is a fascinating character that I highly recommend you go do some research on and pick up some stories from him, especially Maximum Carnage, which Miranda name dropped. But Carnage is a very interesting character. I always love the idea of potentially seeing Carnage on the big screen, but I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I guess you can let him do it. He also, Miranda, he just recently signed on to do kind of a producer role in, I say kinda because he's going to be a producer, but he's also doing a lot more stuff for the adaptation of a fantasy novel adaptation called the King Killer Chronicle, and he just signed on to do that. So they're gonna do like a movie, and then they're gonna do like a TV series attached to it as well. Miranda's just going crazy right now, just picking up projects left and right. I don't think we're not gonna talk about Miranda anytime soon. We're not gonna talk about him anytime soon. All right, so let's move on to pretty much the last news item that came out after the podcast went up last week. Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy did an interview, I believe with Variety. They're the ones that, they're Variety, and she talked about a range of stuff. One of them being that Rogue One, which comes out next week, which we'll talk a little bit more about next week as well, will not have a crawl. And if you don't know what the crawl is what basically starts every Star Wars episode that we've ever seen. It's the crawl telling us a story of how we got to this point in the movie. She also talked a little bit about the Han Solo tone, the young Han Solo movie tone, and potentially getting a female director for a Star Wars film in the future. So let's talk about the first one, which is obviously the big one, that Rogue One probably won't have a crawl. And fans have already been taking this to heart. It was rumored actually a while ago that Rogue One, a Star Wars story, could potentially not have the classic opening crawl that the episode films have. However, it looks like that will be indeed the case. Variety did the interview again with Kathleen Kennedy, and she said this is her quote. We felt that it's so indicative of what those saga films are. Initially, we probably will begin the film in a way that is traditional with just the title. And I know that's going to upset a lot of people, but Rogue One is a standalone film. Yes, it's a spin-off and essentially a prequel to A New Hope because it takes place before the events of A New Hope. But it's not really connected to the saga or episode films in terms of following the Skywalkers, because that's what the episode films are about. They follow the Skywalkers. So this gives the audience, not only that are just not in the know, but that are also in the know, that Rogue One is a totally different beast. Because if they don't see the crawl, I keep saying it weird, the crawl, I don't know why I keep saying it weird. If they don't see that, they know, oh, well, this isn't, like, where is it? But then they realize when they start watching it, this is a completely different animal. So will it be weird to watch because it is essentially a Star Wars film. So will it be weird to watch a Star Wars film without the crawl? Yes, sure. But does it take away from how good or great or potentially even bad Rogue One will be? No, absolutely not. Will it be weird? Yes. But is it essential to have for a Star Wars film? I don't think so. I don't. And I know I'm probably going to get crucified for that comment, but I don't care because that's my opinion. All right, so let's move on. When it comes to the young Han Solo film, she described the tone as, quote, "This moves closer to a heist or Western type feel. We've talked about Frederick Remington's and those primary colors that are used in his paintings defining the look and feel of the film." If you don't know who Frederick Remington is, I highly recommend you go check out his paintings. Very, 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 very cool. So before we move on to the other part, the heist Western feel, I think that's been talked about before, early on when the young Han Solo film was announced first, so we don't have to worry too much about that. Then she commented on the possibility of bringing a female director in, saying this is her first comment, saying, "We want to make sure that we bring a female director in to do Star Wars, that they're set up for success. They are gigantic films, and you don't come into them with essentially no experience." Again, basically she wants, an experienced female director, which there are many experienced female directors out there, if you want to take her quote literally. But then she went on to say this, saying, "We want to really start to focus in on people who would love to work with and see what kinds of things they're doing in progress up that ladder now, and then pull them in when the time is right." So essentially, it almost sounds like, she wants an experienced female director who is also brand new. That's what it kind of looks like. I mean, Gareth Edwards, who is directing Rogue One, essentially has two feature films under his belt. He has an independent monster film called, ironically, Monsters, that got him the Godzilla job. So he has that. So that's what got him, this job. So I don't know. I mean, getting a female. I mean, obviously, I'm not opposed to getting a female director to direct a Star Wars film, because obviously, if you look at big films, whether it be today or whether it be 5-10 years ago, all of these big summer films are directed by male directors, and a lot of male directors get more opportunities. There's not a lot of female directors. I mean, there's a lot of female directors, but a lot of them are kind of stuck doing independent films. Every once in a while, a female director will direct a big film that gets talked about, and then other big films come out, and then she kind of just falls away at the wayside, which is very unfair. But I think the idea of getting a female director for a Star Wars film is very cool. Eva DuVernay, who directed Selma, she was talked about for a while by a lot of outlets, and even by J.J. Abrams, who directed Star Wars Force Awakens, that she could probably come in and do a Star Wars film, and I think that'd be really cool. Yes, these films are gigantic films, so yes, you don't want someone who is not experienced, but you don't want someone who's not experienced, because if you bring them in and they don't know what the hell they're doing, they're going to get overwhelmed, and I don't know what will happen. You'll probably have to bring someone else in. So you don't want that, and I think I think that bringing in a female director is probably a cool idea. You get a new, fresh idea from someone else, not necessarily a woman, just another director. And I think that's the good thing that Lucasfilm is doing is they're bringing in new directors for every film, which is pretty cool. So, all right, that's all the news items that came out last week after the podcast went up, or at least the bigger ones. Anyway, so let's talk about the news items that came out this week. So the first news item that came out this week was Billy D. Williams joins the Lego Batman movie to voice Two-Face. So the Lego Batman movie is giving fans of Tim Burton's 1989 Batman film what they've always waited for, Billy D. Williams as Two-Face, at least in Lego form. The news comes from director Chris McKay himself saying that Williams will voice the Lego Two-Face villain in the film. Again, Billy D. Williams, for those of you who don't know, or maybe forgot, or just, I don't know. I don't know. Billy D. Williams played Harvey Dent in the Tim Burton film. And the idea was when they brought him in that they would eventually turn him into Two-Face in the sequels. However, of course, that never happened. And Billy D. Williams' his only connection to the Batman films now was playing Harvey Dent. Of course, Two-Face was later played by Tommy Lee Jones in Batman Forever. So not only is his casting in the film a nice nod to the old films, it's also something that will be a predominant feature in the Lego Batman film, because there's been reports saying that the Lego Batman film will pay homage and do a bunch of nods to all the Batman films that have come out. So it'd be pretty cool to see. It's going to be pretty cool to see that, and I think fans will be okay hearing Billy D. Williams play the voice of Two-Face anyway. So the Lego Batman movie comes out on February 10th next year, so we won't have to wait too long for that. Dan Trachtenberg is in talks to direct the Harry Houdini biopic. Now, Dan Trachtenberg isn't the biggest household name, but he did direct the very surprisingly good and very surprisingly praised, and I say surprisingly because no one really knew what to expect from this movie, 10 Cloverfield Lane. So he directed that, and it's been a bit surprising that his name hasn't popped up a lot more since then, because everyone really liked 10 Cloverfield Lane when it came out. Maybe not the whole twist thing, but that's just opinions at this point. But it looks like he's finally going to direct another film, and he's going to direct a film none other on the famous escape artist Harry Houdini. The film currently has a script by Noah Oppenheim. He has written the films like The Maze Runner, Allegiant, and Jackie, which we'll talk about a little bit later on the podcast, and is based on the book The Secret Life of Houdini, The Making of America's First Superhero by William Kalash and Larry Solomon. So the biopic has been in the works for a while as well. This is something that's been kicking around. The last bit of news that we heard from the film was back in 2011, and that was when Dean Parasot, who directed Galaxy Quest and Red 2, was on board to direct, and Johnny Depp was attached to play Harry Houdini. There's no word yet on whether Johnny Depp is still attached. I kind of hope not, but whatever. Not a bash on Johnny Depp. I just, I want to see him do normal roles for a while. Not saying Harry Houdini wasn't normal. I mean, he was an escape artist, but just want to see him do something else. That's not all quacky and crazy and over the top. So this film has been in the works for a while, so Dan Trachtenberg is now attached to direct. Hopefully we'll hear something very soon on that front. Moving on, the female 21 Jump Street spinoff gets a new writer. Phil Lord and Chris Miller made a surprisingly good adaptation of 21 Jump Street, and made the sequel, which is one that actually worked. Not many comedy sequels work. So it came as no surprise that Sony Pictures wanted to continue the trend for a while. And at first they wanted to do a crossover between Jump Street and Men in Black. However, it now looks like Sony will be taking a page from their Ghostbusters reboot and are making a female-led 21 Jump Street film. The film was quietly announced. It was very quietly announced because I forgot this was announced back when the announcement was made for Jump Street and Men in Black. The crossover film was discussed and announced. There's been no news on the project. I mean, there has been news, but again, it was very quietly announced because I don't remember any of this. So when the project was announced, Sony hired Broad City writers Paul W. Downs and Lucia Aniello before they took a different pitch from Bob's Burgers writers Lizzie and Wendy Molinex. I think I'm pronouncing I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that last name wrong. But instead of being like, oh, we'll just take this pitch, Sony decided to let the two teams write their own scripts at the same time. And this is something that happens in Hollywood a lot. They have a term for it. I think it's called dual tracking. I think that's what it was called. I didn't write it down, but I think that's what it was. They have a term for it. But it's essentially they hire either two writers or two sets of writers, and they write their own scripts, and then they bring in a third writer to essentially kind of Frankenstein the two scripts together and take the best elements of the two. And a lot of times it doesn't really work. But anyway, it looks like the female 21 Jump Street film has found a new writer and potentially a new director in Rondé Rothman. Now, Rothman got a start as a writer on The Late Show with David Letterman, before writing Grudge Match, which was the Sylvester Stallone and Robert De Niro boxing film that came out, I believe now 2 years ago. And of course, he actually wrote 22 Jump Street. So reports mention that Rothman has actually turned in his first draft of the script already, and that he might direct a film, but that's just talks right now. There's no word yet on who the studios are looking at to star, or even when the film can go into production, but the film will happen. And apparently there's still no word yet on the Jump Street Men in Black film, although Jonah Hill said that, I think, said this maybe 3 months ago, that it's probably not going to happen, so people can breathe a fresh air on that. But as for the female 21 Jump Street film, I know there's probably going to be haters like, oh, another female movie. First of all, shut the hell up. Just, no, you're not adding anything new to the conversation. Shut your mouth. Second of all, we don't know how this is going to work. Look, I know Ghostbusters got a lot of shit for being a female lead film because people are sexist. That's really what it was. It was a sexist issue. Ghostbusters wasn't that bad. Was it a good movie? No. But it wasn't as bad as a lot of people thought it was going to be, or people claim it to be, even though they probably haven't seen the film. Or if they have seen the film, then again, it's not a perfect film, but it's not as bad as a lot of people probably say it is. So female 21 Jump Street film, it could work, if they get the right people, if they bring the right people in, and they have a good story, pretty much. That's what's gonna judge this film, if it works or if it doesn't work. So I have no opinion on it so far. I mean, it could work, it could not work. We'll see what happens. Joe Carnahan's 5 Against a Bullet adds Jackie Chan. Now, Jackie Chan hasn't done too much here stateside lately, but that could change soon, as he is now just signed on for 5 Against a Bullet. The film will be directed and written by Joe Carnahan, who directed The Grey, The A-Team, and Smoking Aces. And the film is set in a small Mexican town under siege by forces of a powerful drug cartel, and centers on a team of 5 elite bodyguards assigned to protect the son of the town's murdered mayor, who is running to take the office himself and wage war on the cartel. Chan will presumably play one of the bodyguards, although that's not confirmed, but we can probably assume that is indeed the case. The film has been in the works for a while now. At one point, Bruce Willis was attached back in 2010, and other directors and actors have come and gone or been in talks, but again, obviously nothing ever happened. And now that Carnahan and Chan are attached, the film looks like it probably really could happen now. I'm a huge fan of Joe Carnahan. I have not made that any, ambiguous at all. I've always said anytime Joe Carnahan pops up in the news, I'm a huge fan of his. And Jackie Chan, anytime we get to see him on screen, is pretty cool. So I can't wait to see this film. I'm interested in seeing who else they put in, because this can be a really cool ensemble pick if they get the right cast together. John Goodman joins Rupert Wyatt's Captive State. John Goodman is always a reliable actor, as many of us know, and he has quite a year coming up for him. He has a lot of big films coming out next year, like The Coldest City, which will be directed by Chad Stahelski, which we talked about earlier on the podcast. Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets, although I think he's only lending his voice for that film. And Kong Skull Island, which of course is a big film we've talked about here on the podcast before. However, it looks like he might be filming another potential big film, as Goodman has signed on for Rupert Wyatt's, who directed Rise of the Planet of the Apes, by the way, sci-fi film Captive State. Nothing is really known about the film so far, although Wyatt himself said that it will be very, quote, grounded and relatable to our world. He co-wrote the script with his wife, Erica Beeney, she herself is a writer in Hollywood. She wrote The Battle of Shakers Heights. And that the film just recently was announced that they will film some parts of the movie here in Chicago, which, a little biased, I had to put that in there. As for Goodman, anytime you see him in the film, of course, he's part of the film's cast, it adds legitimacy to the film. Again, he's a very reliable actor. He's always on top of his game. He never phones it in, and it's always awesome to see him on the big screen. And the film will also act a bit of a reunion because Goodman actually starred in Rupert Wyatt's last directed film, The Gambler, where Goodman essentially played the villain of the film. I haven't seen The Gambler. I always wanted to watch it, but that's the one with Mark Wahlberg, and I think Brie Larson's in the film too. Yeah, she is in the film. So it'll act a bit of a reunion. We don't know who Goodman's playing. Again, we don't even know what the film is really about, but we'll see what happens. The plan is to start filming sometime next year, so we'll probably be hearing a lot more of Captive State pretty soon. Bradley Cooper and Gavin O'Connor are set to work together on the World War II drama film called Atlantic Wall. The film's script was in the 2015 Blacklist, which is, I think we've talked about this, scripts in Hollywood that don't have a studio or are being produced, but are considered the best scripts in Hollywood that are not being made into films. And the film follows a lone American paratrooper stranded behind enemy lines hours before D-Day, who is tasked with delivering intelligence critical to the outcome of the war and compelled to fulfill a promise to protect a young son of a murdered ally. And Cooper will play the paratrooper in the film. The film won't go into production, however, until 2018, considering that both these guys are very busy at the moment. Gavin O'Connor is going to start working on other projects. Of course, the Green Hornet film that was announced a couple weeks ago, he's working on the Chuck Blazer and FIFA soccer scandal film that is being produced by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. He also has a Netflix series that he's working on. For Cooper, he's not already, but he's readying to make his directorial debut with Lady Gaga, of all people, on the remake of A Star Is Born. He's also producing an HBO documentary with his Hangover director Todd Phillips about ISIS, and of course, he has Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 coming out next year. So that being said, the idea of these two working together is pretty exciting. Gavin O'Connor is one of my favorite directors. He's also a director that I think deserves a lot more projects. If you haven't seen Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton, I highly recommend you do. It's one of his best films that he's done. He also did The Accountant, which was pretty good. I believe he directed Lars and the Real Girl, although I haven't seen that film yet. I think he directed that one, but I hear nothing but good things about that movie anyway, so if you haven't seen it, go watch it. We'll watch it together. That's not possible. But anyway, it's pretty good. And Cooper, given the right material whenever he's attached, he's great. So again, this project won't start filming until 2018. So we'll probably hear more about this project sometime next year. Amy Schumer is in talks for the Barbie movie. Hollywood Reporter reports that comedian Amy Schumer is in talks to join Sony in their live-action and long-in-the-works Barbie film. It sounds as ridiculous as it does. The film is being described as a, quote, contemporary spin on beauty, feminism, and identity, end quote. The film currently has a script by Haley Winston, but it is noted in the reports that if Schumer does sign on, she will potentially maybe perform some rewrites with her sister, who she always kind of really works with in everything she does. The film is set in a, quote, perfect land of Barbies where one woman slowly awakens to the fact that she doesn't fit in. She is expelled from the idealistic land and journeys to the real world where she discovers that being unique is an asset. That sounds pretty much right up Amy Schumer's alley. So, Barbie doesn't currently have a director, but Sony is keen on keeping everything toned down, aka family friendly. So a lot of Schumer's, let's just say, colorful language will not be in the film. At least not all of it. She won't be dropping F-bombs all over the place. However, again, hearing the logline, it does make sense that she would be in the film if she is playing this woman that awakes, and realizes that she is unique. Now, with a lead potentially set in Amy Schumer and a potential new script, or at least a reworked script. The search is on for a director. No word yet on when the film, or when Sony wants the film to start production, or no release. There is a release date. It is set sometime next year, although I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be moved now, considering they are just starting to work really on finding the cast. So obviously with this news item, I'm pretty sure we'll be hearing a lot more of Barbie in the near future. I don't know. I mean, I guess it could work. I mean, I'm not the biggest Amy Schumer fan. I do find some of her humor very funny, outright hilarious. Trainwreck was a mixed bag for me. A lot of the jokes work, a lot of it didn't. So I mean, I have nothing against Amy Schumer. I do think she's funny sometimes, and a lot of the humor, of course, doesn't really connect to me because I'm not a woman. But that should matter. But it should be interesting to see who she plays in the film, if she even is the one that gets exiled from the perfect Barbie land. So I don't know. I mean, if it looks good, if they put a good cast together, I'm sure we'll be talking about Barbie sometime. And when you get Schumer, it's not like now with this potential casting, she hasn't officially signed on. This isn't like let's just make a Barbie film so we can make a crap ton of money. No, this is, now that you have Schumer in the film, it doesn't necessarily feel like a cash grab. It feels like something that people are gonna flock to. I mean, sure, the movie's probably gonna make a lot of money because Amy Schumer brings in a lot of people, but I don't know. It's interesting to say the least. Let's put it that way. Tom Holland is in talks for Chaos Walking. Tom Holland, of course, made a name for himself in the small but very awesome role of playing the new Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, in Captain America: Civil War. Now, Holland already has a solo Spider-Man film set up, but it looks like Holland may have just found another potential franchise. The Hollywood Reporter reports that Holland is in negotiations to star in the film adaptation of the novel by Patrick Ness titled Chaos Walking. If Holland joins, he will not just play the male lead, but he will also join the already casted Daisy Ridley, aka Rey from the Star Wars The Force Awakens, who will play the female lead. The novel and the film center on a boy named Todd Hewitt who is living in a world where all women have been killed by a germ, and those who remain can hear and see into each other's thoughts through what's called noise, a chaotic stream of sounds and images. When he discovers an awful secret about his town, he flees with his dog Manchi and encounters a strange girl on the road. Holland broke, of course, into the scene with Spider-Man, but he has been in a bunch of other films before. As a, of course, more younger actor, he was in The Impossible, which was very much talked about as the true story about the tsunami that hit a I forgot where it was. I forgot what country it was in, but it was a tsunami. I think it had Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor. He was in that. He appeared in this TV miniseries Wolf Hall, and he was also in The Heart of the Sea with Chris Hemsworth, who of course plays Thor. So besides Spider-Man Homecoming, Holland has a long in-production adaptation of the biopic The Lost City of Z, which comes out sometime next year, and he's going to be in The Current War, which tells the story of Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse's rivalry. As for Ridley, she of course will be seen in Star Wars Episode 8 sometime next year, or in December next year. I think it's December, or it could be May. I think it's December. I don't remember when it comes out. But it's Star Wars Episode 8. Doesn't matter. She's also been signed on for multiple projects along the way. She's going to be in the remake of Murder on the Orient Express, which talked about a little bit here on the podcast already. She will play Ophelia, as in Shakespeare's Ophelia, in the film Ophelia, and she will lend her voice in the Peter Rabbit film that is currently in pre-production. Chaos Walking will be directed by Doug Liman, who directed Edge of Tomorrow, amongst other things as well, and will have a script written by Charlie Kaufman, who wrote Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. I believe the film goes into production sometime next year. I could be wrong about that, but there is no current release date for the film just yet. And finally, our last news item of the day, live-action Pokemon film Detective Pikachu gets a director. The live-action Pokemon film titled Detective Pikachu has now found a director in Rob Letterman, the director of Goosebumps. He has come on board to direct the film. The film will, of course, follow Detective Pikachu, who is essentially kind of a Sherlock Holmes-like character, as he, well, tries to solve a mystery. Well, that's what the Detective Pikachu character is in the game, Detective Pikachu. However, we don't know official plot details of the film just yet, but we do know the script is being written by Alex Hirsch, who has created and written Disney's XD's Gravity Falls, and Nicole Perlman, who wrote Guardians of the Galaxy, or co-wrote Guardians of the Galaxy, I should say. There's still no word yet on when the film will go into production, but now that we have a script in progress and a director, I can only imagine that the film will probably go into production sometime maybe late next year, maybe early 2018. I think that's probably our best bet, unless they really speed up the process on this. But yeah, we finally have a director for the live-action Pikachu film. Rob Letterman, he directed Goosebumps. I'm kind of okay with this. I really enjoyed Goosebumps. If you haven't seen Goosebumps, I kind of recommend you do. It's not that bad of... I mean, it gets a bit cheesy at times, but it's not that bad of a film. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was going to suck. I really did. I didn't think it'd be any good, but I ended up watching it, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed sitting there watching the film. It gets a bit hammy and cheesy at times, sure, but you know what? It's not that bad. So if you can bring that levity and fun, into this, then I'm kind of okay with it. I really am. I've said from day one, the Pokemon film, I'm not too crazy about Detective Pikachu angle that they're going with, but that's the only thing that's bothering me. But so far, I mean, you got Rob Letterman. I'm okay with this, and I started saying that what will determine whether the live action Pokemon film is a success is the people they bring in. So it's the director, it's the writers, it's not necessarily the actors. I mean, it does matter who they bring in for that. It's probably going to be a bunch of young actors anyway, from the looks of it. But it all depends on the team they build and what they do story-wise and how the effects are. So far, Rob Letterman, Nicole Perlman, Alex Hirsch, pretty decent team, in my eyes. Now it's going to be, effects, who they bring in for the cast, and what the story's going to be, what the real story's going to be about. Again, I'm not crazy about Detective Pikachu stuff, but we'll see. We'll just see. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. All right, so let's move on to trailer talk, or at least mention the trailers. I don't really talk too much about the trailers, really. But there was a first trailer for the new Martin Scorsese film Silence that comes out, I believe, comes out next week or in 2 weeks. Silence, it looks phenomenal. It really does. I think this is going to be nominated for a lot of Academy Awards. So far, the reviews have been really good. So the first trailer for that came out. Again, all the links for the trailers will be down below if you want to go check those out. A new trailer for Passengers came out, the Chris Pratt, Jennifer Lawrence film that's kind of played over the new Imagine Dragons song. There's a new trailer for Fences with Denzel Washington. That's of course based off the play that he and Viola Davis starred in on Broadway, or I think it was off Broadway. But that film just looks so powerful, and just again I talked a little bit about the first trailer that came out, and it was just it was just Denzel Washington and Viola Davis essentially. Just reading off these lines, not reading off these lines, but acting these lines, and you can just tell that it was powerful. And this new trailer is very powerful as well. There's a new Rogue One, a Star Wars story trailer that came out. They're showing new footage. I didn't watch it because I'm just gonna wait to see it next week. But there's a new trailer there. The first trailer for a faith-based film called The Shack, that is led by Sam Worthington. It's about a guy played by Sam Worthington who meets the Holy Trinity. So there's that. The first Red Band trailer for the Becklow Experiment has been released. This film was written by James Gunn. It premiered at the Midnight Madness at the Toronto International Film Festival. It got a lot of positive reaction from that. It's a Red Band trailer, so it's not safe for work if you're listening to this podcast somewhere at work. I don't know why you'd be at work at this time, but I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that came out. It looks really great. I know there's going to be a bunch of people saying, oh, it's a Battle Royale ripoff. Shut up. Just enjoy the film. And finally, the first teaser for The Mummy. Now, the trailer will be released on Sunday, so we'll talk about the trailer on the podcast next week. But they released, I don't really like mentioning teasers for teasers because I think it's just a dumb idea that they're doing this. It's just a waste of time. But there's a teaser for the teaser that comes out on Sunday. The trailer looks, the teaser for the trailer anyway, looks great. We actually get to see Sofia Boutella from Kingsman, the first Kingsman film. She was also in Star Trek Beyond. We get to see her as the mummy. So we get to see her. It looks like she's about to wreck shit up. And there's this really cool shot of her eyes. It looks like she has 2 irises. I think that's the part of the eye. I probably should learn my eye anatomy before talking about the eye. But it's a really cool, creepy shot. And yeah, I mean, just based off the teaser to the teaser, again, I hate saying that, but it doesn't look that bad. It looks pretty cool. So I obviously will save my judgment until I see the real teaser. Again, it comes out on Sunday. We'll talk about it on the next podcast, and I will try to, if it comes out on Sunday, but depending on what time it comes out, obviously I'll post it on the Facebook page so you guys can go check that out. All right, so let's talk about this week's releases. It's a pretty light week, guys. There's not a lot of stuff coming out. So the first limited release this week is Jackie. Of course, following the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy, fights through grief and trauma to regain her faith, counsel her children, and define her husband's historic legacy. Natalie Portman will play Jacqueline Kennedy. The film also stars Peter Sarsgaard, Billy Crudup, Greta Gerwig, John Carroll Lynch, Richard E. Grant, and John Hurt. The film's been getting nothing but great reviews. It looks like a powerful film. Every trailer that has come out has just been amazing to watch, and I cannot wait to hopefully see this. It comes out limited release. I think it's coming out literally 5 theaters, at least from the last theater count that I saw. But obviously it's going to get a rollout this month. So if you don't see it in your theaters this week, just wait till next week or the week after. It will definitely be hitting more theaters as the month rolls on. It just looks really good, and people are already saying that it's an early Oscar contender. They're saying that Natalie Portman could win the best female actor Oscar. So just basing off the trailers, it kind of looks that way. So we'll see what happens with that. That's the big limited release coming out this week. The wide release, quote unquote wide release, coming out this week is Incarnate. A scientist played by Aaron Eckhart with the ability to enter the subconscious minds of the possessed must save a young boy from the grips of a demon with powers never seen before while facing the horrors of his past. Again, the film stars Aaron Eckhart, Karis Van Houten, who plays Melisandre on Game of Thrones, and David Mazouz. I always mispronounce the last name. He plays he plays Bruce Wayne in the TV show Gotham on Fox. So yeah, Incarnate is the quote wide release this week. If you haven't seen any trailers for it, I don't blame you. I've barely seen trailers for it, so I don't blame you if you don't even know it's coming out or don't know anything about it or whatever. So Incarnate, that's your wide release this week. So yeah, let's move on to this week's box office predictions. Again, there was no picks last week because I didn't do a real podcast last week. So, but the box office last week was Moana came in at number 1. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them came in at number 2. Doctor Strange at number 3. Allied at number 4. And Arrival at number 5. I'm pretty sure the box office is going to stay the same this week. So I'm going to say my picks this week is essentially the box office from last week. Moana, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Doctor Strange, Allied, and Arrival. So those are my picks this week. Watch I be completely wrong. I'm pretty sure maybe movies will shift around, but I think that's a good. I mean, again, Incarnate's getting a wide release, but it's getting a quote wide release. There's not a lot of attention for it, so I don't think it's gonna even. I'll be surprised if it cracks the top 5. I really will be, but yeah. So those are my box office picks: Moana, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Doctor Strange, Allied, and Arrival. All right, so thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. again, there was a lot of stuff to sift through, and I got through it pretty quickly, surprisingly. So thank you guys so much for listening. One final bit of news item that came, I didn't really talk about too much because the quotes were really big, but Jon Favreau did an interview with Collider. It's essentially a lead into a bigger interview that they're doing with him, but they released it's not necessarily snippets, because again the quotes were pretty big. He talked about the Jungle Book 2 and the Lion King film, and the quotes were pretty promising. What he talked about, especially about the Lion King. So I can't wait to see what he does with that. But if you want to read his quotes for yourself, again, they're very promising. They're very good. I just didn't want to stumble over them because I think reading them yourselves would be a better idea for that. And again, just reading them for yourself will probably help ease your anger over the Lion King being reimagined, essentially. And so yeah, I'll put a link to that down below if you want to go check that out. Again, very promising quotes. I highly recommend you check them out to get an idea of where the Lion King is heading, and it looks like he's going to pay a lot of respect to it. So just want to put that out there. So also down below is, of course, the links to the Facebook page, facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit if you want to go check that out. You can get links to all the trailers that came out. You also get pretty much a preview of what we're going to talk about here on the podcast. Again, there's stuff that goes up on the Facebook page that sometimes we don't talk about, and sometimes vice versa here on the podcast. So go like my page. I really appreciate that. Also, while you're down there, you can find my page for my written reviews and more at movieswithchris.wordpress.com. That's movieswithchris.wordpress.com. Written reviews written by me. Although if you like the Facebook page, you will get a link to that when the reviews go up as well. And a lot more stuff. I'm trying to do more stuff on that page. I do a monthly preview on movies coming out. Every once in a while, I'll do a spoiler-full discussion on some bigger movies. And like I said, I'm going to be doing some more bigger stuff on that page very soon as well. So that page is going to get a lot more active than just written reviews and monthly previews and stuff like that. So movieswithchris.wordpress.com and the Facebook page, facebook.com/moviepit. Links will be down below in the description/show notes area. Also, while you're down there, you can check out all the links to the trailers that came out this week, and you can check out the timestamps. So if you want to go back and re-listen to a movie news item, or just want to skip certain news items, you can go do that. Of course, it doesn't help the fact that I told you this after the fact, but if you're one of those people that checks out the description/show notes area before the podcast even starts, there you go. All right, so thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Once again, it was a big week. It was a big news week. It was a big news week last week. This week was a bit light on the news items, but we got some pretty cool trailers to save it. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast again this week. I hope you guys have a very safe, fun weekend. Be safe out there. Have some fun. And of course, as always, go watch some movies.